right, so I'm going to do a screen share and we're going to talk about editing. And as we talk about it, you're going to do a few things for me. The first thing I want everybody in the room to do is to make sure that you can still log into Criterion, that you don't need me to look up your password or change it for you, et cetera, et cetera. And we're going to do that before we do anything else. Just take a So we are going to talk about how to use Criterion effectively today, and some other editing tactics to use as well. So the first step in the editing process is to use multiple submissions in Criterion to reduce errors in grammar, usage, and mechanics. Now, the way I would work it, again, I try to work really methodically because I get really jumbled very easily. My brain is a very messy place. So to combat that, I try to break things down and take things one at a time, right? So if I look in there and it says I've got 24 errors in grammar and 14 in usage and 12 in mechanics, I'm going to be overwhelmed. So what I do is I do one submission just for the grammar errors. Let me run through those and then we submit and see if those are gone. And then I'm going to do one submission looking at the usage errors and see if I can take care of each of those. And then I'm going to submit and see if those are gone, right? And then I'm going to do one for mechanics errors. And I would do at least 3 submissions, one for each category. And that way I'm not overwhelmed trying to look at everything all at once, right? I think the more you break things down into small pieces, the easier it is. Criterion also, I want you to remember that when you're using Criterion, you should be on a split screen where you can see the errors on one side with the little drop-down boxes where you click on grammar and it shows you, you got 4 fragments and you click on it and it highlights them over here. And over here, you can fix those fragments, right? You got to get to that split screen. If you don't remember how to get to the split screen, hold on, stand by, this is miraculous. There is a video in, well, it was in a previous week as well, but I have put a copy of it here in week 12, which is a video on how to use Criterion effectively. And it tells you how to get to that split screen, right? And how to use the drop-down box and even how to understand some of the things. Then it shows you how to export or copy and paste out of Criterion and into a Word document and get that Word document ready to turn into Blackboard, right? Now, I think that video starts out with showing somebody how to sign up for Criterion, but y'all can fast forward. Don't stop watching the video because the first part isn't what you need. Fast forward until you see the screen. It shows you how to copy and paste into it and all that good stuff. And it's a weird little program. So if you need a reminder of how to use it, do watch that video for me. Okay. All right. So we were talking about how to edit successfully. And the first step is to use Criterion. That's step number 1. Okay. But Criterion isn't going to find everything, right? It's limited. It's not as smart as you are. So you have to do your own editing. And so after you copy out of Criterion into a Word document or other word processing program, the next step is to edit independently, okay? And I'm going to talk to you in a second. I'm actually going to stop the share for a second, talk to you just kind of independently about the way we think about editing and how it's been taught to you over the years. How many of you have been taught that editing is looking for your errors, looking for your mistakes? Yeah, Shantavia is raising her hand as well. Shantavia, did you have a question or were you just agreeing that that's how it's been taught to you?
Just agreeing with you.
Yeah, it's really all about finding our errors, which should mean that now that we're very smart and good writers, we don't have much editing to do, correct? Osagi's like, I hope so. He's like, that would be good. All right. I would also assume that when you're editing, you do it with the mindset that you are hoping not to find very many things that need to be changed, correct? Everybody's nodding, nodding on that as well. Yes. Okay. That's actually when we hit the college level and we're all pretty good writers, like you all are. You are some good writers in here. We need to change our ideas about what editing is. Okay. Editing is not just finding errors. It definitely is finding errors. If there are errors in there, we want to find them, right? But it's more about making sure that your writing is as good and effective as it can be on the sentence level. So if there's a sentence there that says, I am Groot, you know, that's perfectly fine, but it's not very expressive. It's kind of hilariously not expressive, which is why I chose it as an example. But if you said, the author is John Davidson. Okay, yes, that sentence is totally correct. Is it the most effective sentence it can be? Or could you say, John Davidson wrote an article in which he expresses his concerns about removing the monuments? It's a little bit more of an informative sentence, right? So, but if you, on the flip side, if your sentence introducing Davidson is like 3 lines long and all tangled up, and you try to read it out loud and you get confused, also not great. You would be better off to go back to the article was written by John Davidson, right? Right? Keep it simple, right? So I have some students who are trying to expand their sentences so they're not little and choppy. And then I have students who are really smart students, but their ideas are so complicated that they need to actually simplify their sentences. And it's a job for them to simplify their sentences so that we can follow their thoughts, right? So as we hit this level that we're at, we need to edit looking for things that we can make better, not just things that are wrong, okay? The other thing to switch is that we're actually looking for as many errors as we can possibly find. We're hoping to find a lot. Why? Why are we hoping to find a lot of errors? Because they're in there, right? They're in there. And if you find them, I don't, right? Okay. And this is the mentality that had to shift for me when I was looking to send things out to publishers. So will you publish this article? Right? Will you publish this article? And turning it into my graduate advisor. Graduate advisor doesn't care that there's an error. He's just going to show it to me. But I could have an article rejected if I have too many errors. I'm a really good writer, but y'all, there were errors because I'm human, right? So the errors are in there because we type wrong, or we're going fast, or we're writing it at 3 o'clock in the morning and we're exhausted, right? We're human, so there are errors in there. So we want to switch that mentality from hoping we don't see very many to hoping we find them all, right? So think of it more as a scavenger hunt than like finding all your failures, right? There's a way that looking for things is a good thing, like a scavenger hunt, and then there's a way where you look in the mirror and you find every flaw in your face. We don't want that mentality where you're finding all your flaws. We want the scavenger hunt. Oh, I found one. Oh, I found one, right? And we want to have it be like, yes, I found 10 things I needed to fix in this paragraph. Smart me, right? Instead of, oh my gosh, I made 10 mistakes in that paragraph. I'm so dumb. And if you can shift the way you feel about finding errors, you'll allow yourself to find more of them. Okay, just accept that they're in there and it's your job to find them. Hunt those little suckers down like they're bugs in the kitchen, y'all. Okay, we live in the South. There's always going to be bugs in the kitchen, right? But we got to find them and get rid of them. Okay, all right. So we're going to use a particular model of editing to find them. And that model I'm going to share with you now. How many of you edit now? What do you do to edit now? Kaylin, what do you do to edit? Okay, good. So we're remembering that we have a method and you're trying it out. Okay, cool. How many of you are still in the I read it over? Mom is good. All right. We've got to go from reading it over to an actual on-purpose editing method, okay? I had a student at UAB who was pulling D's at low D's, like almost F's on his papers. And then he started using my method. And not to brag, but his next paper was a B plus and the one after that was an A. This is a tedious method, but it really works. So let's share it and let's learn this method. All right. So to edit independently, first I recommend taking one paragraph at a time. And I recommend starting with your conclusion because it's the one you were the tiredest when you wrote. Okay, so it's probably your worst paragraph. But it's also the one I see right before I enter your grade. So you want it to actually be one of your best paragraphs, right? So do a paragraph of editing and then take a break, right? And how long a break you take depends on how much time you have and how many paragraphs you have to edit. If you have 20 paragraphs to edit in 5 days, you're doing 4 paragraphs a day and not more than that, okay? If you have 7 paragraphs and 7 days to edit, 1 paragraph a day will do, okay? So break it down so that you're not trying to do the whole thing in one sitting, okay? Because it's tedious and it's a pain in the neck and your brain gets tired. And when your brain gets tired, you miss things, okay? So do 1 paragraph today, 1 paragraph tomorrow, 2 paragraphs on Saturday, that kind of thing, okay? All right. If you're doing multiple paragraphs in one day, maybe do 1 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon, right? Or at very least, take a 5 to 10 minute break in between to walk around, have a snack, do something else, okay? Because editing is horrible. Nobody likes it except editors, right? Right, those are the only people who like this job. Okay. I couldn't do it. All right, so we start with the last sentence in that section and we read it out loud, or better yet, have somebody else read it out loud to you. This is a great time to team up with a teammate or a roommate or a sibling or a parent and the way to have them help you edit is for them to read it out loud to you while you look on and you're like, that was not what I was trying to say, right? Or wow, that was a mess. Right, so you can hear it because somebody else will not autocorrect what you have written. You will, they won't. So having them read it out loud to you is even better. If you are, I lived by myself writing my dissertation. I had to do it by myself. So I would read it out loud to myself. Going from the last sentence back toward the first helps because when you read it frontwards, you like it. It sounds really good. You should like your work at this point in time, but that doesn't help you find the mistakes. Going backwards does a few things. Number one, if you're scanning and scanning and scanning and scanning to find the beginning of the sentence, that sentence is probably too long. You need to break it down, right? You might have a run-on your hands. Number two, if you read it by yourself and it's an added detail fragment or a dependent word fragment, you're going to read it by itself and realize it doesn't make any sense by itself and connect it up to what it was supposed to be connected to, which is usually the sentence before it, okay? So you're gonna be able to find those run-ons and fragments. The other thing that going backwards does is that it makes it less familiar to your brain, so your brain is more able to use it to look at it like a workbook page instead of loving the ideas that you have, because at this point, again, you should like your ideas. So we are checking it for fragments, run-ons, subject-verb agreement, verb forms, capitals, punctuation, spacing, and title formats. That's a lot of stuff to check. And I'm going to check in with you now to make sure that you know what a fragment is. A fragment is part of a sentence that you have punctuated as a whole sentence, right? So they like to say it's an incomplete idea, but it's not always. People can totally understand you when you speak in fragments, but it's not how we want to write. So if I go, oh, she crazy, that's a fragment because it's missing the verb is in there. But you all know exactly what I mean. So I don't like the incomplete thought idea because a lot of fragments do make sense. They're just taken, there's a piece missing, right? And those pieces are that there needs to be a subject, a verb, and independent meaning. It needs to make sense by itself. So I could say, especially because it's sunny outside. And I have the it and the is sunny, right? But it still doesn't mean anything by itself. I say, especially because it's sunny outside. You have no idea what I'm talking about, right? It doesn't have independent meaning. You're either waiting for me to finish that sentence or thinking you came in mid-sentence into the room. Okay, or that I've lost my mind. Okay, a run-on is just the opposite. It's when you have two sentences and you've punctuated them as one, right? So you say, she likes pizza, she's a weirdo, and you've punctuated those as one sentence instead of two. So I like to remember the new subject, new sentence rule. When you see a new subject, like a noun, that's serving as a subject or a pronoun, he, she, or it, the author, something like that, that's a new subject. That should be a new sentence. So look for those. Subject-verb agreement is using he says instead of he say, right? Which comes up because some of our casual dialects in this region standardize it so that that third person singular is the same as all the others. I say, you say, he, she, or it say, and they just standardize it, which makes more sense, but it marks you as someone who can only speak the casual dialect and not the fancy dialect that changes it for the third person to have that S ending. So I have, you have, he, she, or it has with that S ending, okay? So make sure you're looking for those as well. Those can be tricky, especially when your sentence is weird. So if Criterion points out subject-verb agreement errors, that's what it's talking about. Verb forms. Verb forms can be tricky, again, because the casual dialect and the academic dialect can be different. I know that I used to say, he snuck up on me, and it should be sneaked. Did I just blow everybody's minds? Wait till I tell you about what happens when you drag something yesterday. Yeah, okay, sneaked. I promise. I have a doctorate in English. I promise you it is sneaked. It's sneaked. S-N-E-A-K-E-D. It's not snuck. I know. I've corrected it in several of my daughter's picture books. Since forever. Since forever. All right. That's funny. All right. Also, the past, because someone corrected it on my mother's college paper and she made sure I grew up knowing it instead of making the same mistake she did. And then we checked in a dictionary, made sure it was right. We sure do use it a lot, but no. All right. Drag. I dragged it today. What did I do yesterday? Dragged my couch to the curb. That's right. Dragged, past tense, is G-G-E-D. Again, I know, crazy talk, but I promise it's true. The past tense of to drag is dragged. I have dragged. So we got to check those, right? If we say, I saw a monument, I have seen a monument, but we're not going to go to I seen it, right? So we got to make sure we're checking those verb forms. You can look it up in a dictionary. If you're in Criterion and it tells you there's a verb form error, you can look up, you can just type into Google past tense of have, and it'll tell you it's had, right? So you can look that up. But definitely check it. That's one criterion might help you with, but you got to be on the lookout for them as well. I have been seeing a lot of I seen a monument instead of the I have seen a monument or I saw a monument. So we got to make sure we're checking those. Capitals, punctuation, spacing, title formats. And then you move to the next sentence up and you do it again. And it's tedious, so that's why one paragraph at a time. Yeah, because oof, no fun. All right, some common fragments that come up in the research essays are these. I see them a lot in source introduction sentences that have been chopped up. So here's one that's wrong. That's why it's got an X in front of it. In the article, this is an article title, period, by some guy, period. He says it is important stuff to read. That's the same as saying in my house, period, right? If you chop up the in the article and then put the period at the end, you've created a fragment. It's just a prepositional phrase and nothing else, right? So to correct that, we want to say there was an article called, this is an article title, right? It was written by some guy, right? So we've got to make sure that we're not chunking those down. A comma will connect it to something else. A period separates it. So if you want to keep going with that sentence, that's totally fine, but you got to check a comma in there instead of the period. Okay? So commas connect, periods separate. Yeah? Commas connect, periods separate. Let's hear it from you. Commas connect, periods separate. Good. Okay. So we also see some added detail fragments. So you've got your article, and you're doing something that looks like this, and I'm going to get rid of that for a second. Article says this quote is from, this is a quote from my article, and then you follow it up with especially because blah blah blah, right? But that's that added detail or emphasis thing, and we want to make sure that we have what follows every quote be a complete sentence. So that's where we add quotes are awesome, especially in the morning. Now we've got something that's a full sentence, right? It is okay to add the especially in the morning to the sentence where you've quoted, but then move the citation to the end of the sentence, okay? The citation shouldn't interrupt your sentence. It should go at the end of it. Even though the quote is over, the citation goes at the end of your sentence if your sentence continues. Oh, you can. There we go. All right. We also have emphasis fragments, and I've been seeing these in a lot of thesis paragraphs where you start out at the top with something you feel is attention grabbing. And they do grab my attention, but they grab me and make me think about fragments, which maybe is not the first impression you want to make, right? So yes, I'm not going to say you can't ever use these. These are used as a style tool, but use them sparingly. Don't do it for every topic sentence, y'all. I got a couple of people who are doing it in every topic sentence, and it makes me feel like maybe they're struggling with transitions. So use it once or twice, but when you overuse it, it tells me you need more tools in your toolbox, okay? Racism, danger, offensive comments, these are all bad things, right? Absolutely use it once or twice for effect, but not in every topic sentence. That tells me that you're not comfortable with topic sentences yet, okay? All right, and know when you're doing it. Don't do it just not understanding what it is. Run-ons. Okay, the same way our source introductions can cause fragments, they can also cause run-ons, especially when we're trying to do all the jobs separately. I've been seeing some of these, and I'm gonna I've been seeing this. There's an article called I Hate Doing Research Essays. It was written by all students. In the article, it says everybody hates research in 101, but we all have to write one paragraph 10. This is true. I've been seeing kind of a lot of these. So we want to make sure that when we see a new subject, we have a new sentence. So again, commas connect, periods separate. The other thing to remember in your head is new subject, new sentence. So I've underlined the subjects here. There's an article, right? It was, it says, this is, right? So we need to make sure that those are in separate sentences or connected properly. So there was an article called, I hate doing research essays. We're going to end that right there. And this is a new sentence, so we capitalize it, right? That period does go inside the quotes. I think in one of our models it was outside and it's been throwing everybody off. I'll have to pick a new model next time or correct that in the model. It was written by all students, period. In the article, and then a comma at the end of that prepositional phrase, it says, comma, quote, and then if we're ending this sentence, where does it end? I see you, Shantavia. If we're ending this sentence, where does it end? Before or after the citation? After the citation, and then a capital T in this. So if you're seeing a lot of those run-ons, or if Criterion is saying you have run-ons, make sure that you're looking for those. Okay, so remember, new subject, new sentence. Shantavia, yes ma'am, you have a question.
Yes, I was.
Title format rules apply in the body of your essay and in the works cited list. So you got to check them in both places. Asagi, tell me the first rule of a title format.
The letter in each significant word is capitalized.
That's better reading than I had writing. The first letter in each significant word is capitalized. This is a long title. It also has a very long and obnoxious subtitle, and we hate typing it. We got to capitalize all the way through that title. And when you're copying it over from something and you've copied and pasting it and it doesn't have that, you've got to go in and you've got to update it. And it's a big pain in the butt, and I do apologize, but that's the way it is. Welcome to research papers. Okay, I know, I don't like it either, but we got to fix them. All right, let's see. Shannon, what is the second rule of article title, of title format rules? Right, so article titles go inside quotation marks like this. And then Amaya, what's our last rule for title format rules?
Periodical titles get underlined or italicized, magazine titles, magazine titles.
Right, so underlined or italicized. So some of the mistakes I'm seeing are that some folks they really want to have their bases covered, and so they'll make their article titles both underlined and in quotation marks, or both in italics and in quotation marks, and you don't need to do that. It's just one at a time, okay? You also don't want to have something both underlined and italicized. Again, one is enough. Okay, so one italicizing or underlining for a periodical title, and then article titles are just in quotation marks. They're not also underlined. Every once in a while, someone will write an article that has a book title in it, like How Much the Color Purple Changed My Life, and then the color purple will be italicized inside the quotation marks, but that's because it's a book title inside the article title. All right. Okay, so make sure that you're looking for those, especially the capitalizations. Sometimes you have titles where it's in all caps, and you have to standardize it to this rule instead of being in all caps. I know a couple of people have one about monuments, and it's in all caps. Make the title stop shouting at me. I don't know. Don't know, but it's up to us to fix it, right? One of my favorite things Will Smith ever said is that whose fault it is one thing, whose responsibility it is to fix it is another, right? So it doesn't really matter whose fault it is or why it's happening, it's up to us to fix it, right? All right, so citation formats. So this is one of the things that's really picky, and you might do one read through your essay just looking at your citation formats, okay? So I'm gonna make this wrong. I'm just gonna make it wrong. It's very wrong. This is my quote. Fix it. What do we do? Okay. There, how's that? How's that? Okay, so this is one of the things that happens, and it's really tricky. You have copied your quote from a source, right? And it comes with a period at the end, right? And so it feels weird to get rid of that period, but it's there when you've copied and pasted it, and you put the quotes around it, and then you have to actually go in and take the action of getting rid of it and putting it over here. Yes, ma'am. Right, and or it might be half of a sentence and it looks like this when you copy it. If it looks like that when you copy it, you should do that to let me know the sentence continues. If it's two sentences, the last sentence still is the end of your sentence. Get rid of it. Exactly. All right, is that correct now? Nope. Who can spot what's wrong with it? There, is that correct? You do need a space. Capital or lowercase p? Lowercase. Good. Okay. That's a lot, y'all. That's a lot of details, right? So make sure that you're really doing maybe one sweep through, looking at every citation and making sure your punctuation goes end quote, space, parentheses, lowercase p, AR period, space, number, parentheses, period. It's a lot. And I actually do it out loud and I make it really big. I do what I've done here and I push the up button so that the font is really big so that I can see my spaces and periods really well, right? If you want to select the whole thing and make it like 20-point font while you're editing, there's nothing wrong with editing at 20-point font and then shrink it back down. But if whatever helps you see those details, use that tool. You can see I use the plus sign so I can see those details really well. All right, questions about citation format? All right, I think that's the end of editing. There's a lot to think about when we edit, so it's kind of a big job this week. All right, I'm gonna pause.